when you wake up in the morning and you say, I have 10 hours today to make a difference, who am I going to make a difference for?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to go make a difference for the 1.5 million developers who are using my product for free?
Mm.
Or am I going to go make a difference for the companies who are paying me? Open source has always been difficult to sustain. There's licensing models and there's open collective type stuff. There's the benevolent dictator for life method.
Yeah. Do you have a skill that you shipped lately that impressed you?
We shipped a meta skill with TanStack Intent. It's cool because you can install TanStack Intent and then say, hey, what are all my skills? And it's like, hey, there's one here to build skills. So you say, hey, build me a skill about this, and it will use our skill to help you build. There's skillception, right?
Wow. How do you maintain that North Star under such immense pressure, though?
The first principle that I have kind of really tried to make important is to just
Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Merge, our podcast here at the Code Rabbit office, brought to you out of San Francisco. Today, I'm very excited because I'm here with Tanner Linsley, the creator and founder of TanStack, a framework or an ecosystem really used by billions of developers worldwide. And with that being said, welcome, Tanner. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Busy day, but it's great.
Well, it's a beautiful day in San Francisco.
Yes,
so
it is. This office is awesome.
The office is awesome, and I think you just came in the right time. Sunny side up in San Francisco. It's been hot.
Yeah, I mean, it feels great to me. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, obviously you are very famous within the ecosystem, but maybe for those people who haven't heard about you before, could you give us a little bit of a brief about yourself as well as about TanStack?
Sure. I mean, I've been building web software for a long time. Been doing open source for about 10 years in various projects. I started TanStack around 2018, 2019 to kind of be an umbrella for all the open source that I wanted to build. And I also needed a better name than just React Query and React Table, especially as we started moving into other frameworks that just wasn't going to fly. So yeah, TanStack was a nickname given to me by a friend, Sean Wang, Swix, if you know who he is. I resented it at first, and then I leaned into it. So the SEO is fantastic.
Yeah.
Nobody else really uses that term. So yeah, that's what it ended up being. So now we have a lot of different projects. We've got tons of libraries, and we have tons of contributors and maintainers beyond just me. Something people hear TanStack, and a lot of times they still think that it's somehow just me, which couldn't be further from the truth. There's so many people involved behind the scenes with this organization, and we're just building what I think are really cool things.
Right.
So, yeah,
You are. So my career actually started in embedded C, so very much a lower level programming language. So TanStack was kind of a different world for me at the start. Maybe for somebody in my role, can you explain us where you started and what is the problem TanStack solved? I mean, maybe starting at
Sure.
React Query.
Yeah. So we started TanStack by building libraries specifically around UI and UX frameworks. So the very first one that I started working in actually was Angular. I built my very first libraries inside of Angular. Eventually, I got into data visualization. I worked a long time on Chart.js, actually, for a while. That was a lot of fun. And then I started getting more into like the UI framework stuff. So specifically React. When I moved over from Angular to React, it was a very greenfield ecosystem. There were a lot of hard problems to solve, new or old problems to solve, but in new ways with React. And so that's where a lot of the libraries that we built came into play. So React Query was one of those libraries that I ended up building to manage asynchronous state in React. Why is that a problem? Because the source of truth for a lot of our data does not live on the browser and the client where we build our web apps. It lives other places, persistent places, whether that's a database or through an API call or a service that you have. And what you get in your browser when you're building a web application is just a snapshot of that state from your database or
Mhm.
whatever, anything that's asynchronous. And to the user, you are kind of throwing up a facade that that data is always up to date and live with what's in the database, which is really rarely true unless you're using like a sync engine. And
Right.
even then, synchronization is a process. So I built React Query because I was running into that problem where, my views in my app were out of date and I needed to keep them up to date with what was in my database.
Mhm.
And a lot of the tools out there to do that at the time were just really clunky to do that. I think the most popular way to do it at the time when I built it was using Redux
Mhm.
with thunks and sagas and an entirely new vocabulary of things.
Yeah.
Um, and React Query was just simple. It was just a hook that you could throw into any React project and say, this is where my data comes from. And we built in really good defaults so that for the most part, for 90% of people, it just worked out of the box with that one hook. It would just keep your data up to date, and that was it.
Wow.
So that's how we kind of got our start, was in data synchronization. But a lot of our other libraries do very different things as well other than that. So,
Yeah, it was the start of a great journey, so to say.
yeah,
Can you walk us through what came after that? Because I think there's like a whole, I mean, I want to say, yeah, an ecosystem that developed out of this.
absolutely. Well, it's funny because Query was not the first library.
Mhm.
React Table was actually the first one that really took off. It's not as general purpose as
Mhm.
something like React Query. If you needed a data grid, then you knew what React Table was. So Table actually came first, but after that, we really started to spread out. So first I did Table, then I did React Query. I did React Form for a while,
Mhm.
but when Formic and React Hook Form and a couple others came out, forms are it's hard. And I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to worry about forms. So I just said, never mind. And I deprecated that library.
Mhm.
After that, I built TanStack Virtual, which is list virtualization. It's headless virtualization for the DOM, which is a pretty cool concept.
Wow.
After that, we needed a way to manage state between all of them that was the same way.
Mhm.
So we built TanStack Store. And then eventually I made my way into routing. So
Wow.
at my last startup that I was at for a decade,
Uh-huh.
I just kind of was cycling through all these difficult problems that we ran into building a data heavy SaaS application. So you can kind of see it if you look at the libraries. It's like, oh, tables,
Yeah.
data synchronization, forms.
It's like a roadmap.
Yeah. And eventually I got to the router because we had started building so many dashboards and so many screens that they were just getting out of sync. Our links were getting
Mhm.
out of sync with what options are there when you're going to this page. And we were using search parameters for a lot of those options, and none of it was type safe. Using the best tools I could find at the time, React Router v6 beta, it was in beta for a while, was an
Mhm.
amazing tool. Some validation libraries. Using everything I could at the time, I just could never get routing to where I wanted it. So I ended up breaking out of the existing tools and building my own router with all of that stuff kind of first class. Because it was fresh ground, I was able to, take inspiration from some of the good ideas from React Router and Next and kind of build what I wanted. And type safety obviously plays a huge role in all of this stuff. I used to be against TypeScript for a while, like in my younger years. I was like, oh
Uh-huh.
man, why would you waste your time writing types? That's
I mean, it seems like as a paradigm, it seems if you just want to prototype something fast, it seems cumbersome.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Anytime you have to write types, it's just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But I soon learned that using TypeScript and writing type safe code is really not the same thing.
Mm.
You use TypeScript to write type safe code in JavaScript, but they're very different. There's a lot of libraries and and applications out there that are written in TypeScript, but you just see manual type casting and types everywhere.
Mhm.
And TypeScript is actually so much better than that. When I finally like bit the bullet and I asked a couple of friends to help me learn TypeScript, I was like, I have to admit
It's good.
I need to use it,
Yeah.
but I don't know how. I'm scared, right? How do I
Mhm.
do this? Like Brandon Beyer comes to mind. He runs flight control. Um, I remember my first call with Brandon where he showed me how to design an API using only types,
Mhm.
no JavaScript. And I was like, what are you doing? Like this is so meta, you know? And once it clicked, it made sense. But the thing that he taught me that was the most important thing was all about inference, is that if you write libraries correctly with TypeScript, then as soon as you can infer and grab a type out of user code,
Mhm.
you should be able to capture that and pipe it through to everywhere else that they need it.
That's a very important concept as well for
Yeah.
TanStack, right?
Yeah. Because if you look at router and query, table, DB, all of them, it's our goal is to make it look like when you're writing with these libraries,
Mhm.
it doesn't look like you're writing TypeScript because there's no TypeScript syntax. That's the goal. In fact, you can write entire routes with TanStack Router without writing any TypeScript syntax in your file. But it's 100% type safe because we're inferring everything we can. And as long as your data sources, like,
Mhm.
if you're using Drizzle or Prisma or whatever, as long as your sources of type information are there and you can infer them, we will carry them through the entire system automatically for you without you having to write types.
And I mean, that concept built the foundation, I guess, for or was part of the foundation for the huge success that you had. I mean, the the framework is I checked your website, downloaded I think 6.6 billion times as of today this morning. And
Yeah, that's an interesting number. NPM downloads are a terrible measure of,
yeah.
you know, but I mean, yeah, it's query is very popular. Router and start are very new. Um, but yeah, people are catching on
Okay.
that, type safe code is scalable code. And here we are, Code Rabbit. We've got to talk about AI, right?
All right.
And I wouldn't call it an accident. We knew we knew that types were important for people's brains to
Mhm.
just not go crazy trying to keep all that information in your head,
Yeah.
right? And I think about the junior developer or the intern coming into a project and they see TypeScript code and they're just like, "What the heck is this?" My goal would be for them to not ever have to worry about that.
Mhm.
That's why all the craziest types you'll ever see are in the source code for all of our libraries. We will happily write those and build the cool types there. But AI is not very different sometimes from a junior or
Mhm.
an intern. You know, in some ways, it's like, wow, so powerful. You can do so much so quickly and it can span broad subjects and write a ton of code. But it's understanding, it's in intuition and understanding of some things can be very hallucinogenic, right?
Mhm.
Um, type safety is just one of the ways that I think one of the best ways to keep AI on the right trajectory, the right vector, to
Mhm.
keep the guardrails on. And by focusing on type safety so much with TanStack over the last 5, 6 years, all of a sudden AI comes along and yeah, we may not be in the training data as much in the training data for things like a Next.js has been over the last 6 or 7 years, right? Or a React router. But what's interesting is as soon as you give it enough context on how to use TanStack libraries, um, it ends up self-correcting and self-healing a lot during your journey because though that same rigid type inference system that we have set up, it feeds back into these models, and those models they'll try something, and the types are so automatic and strict that it yells at it, and it's like, "What are you
Mhm.
doing? That's not right." And the model's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." you know.
You're absolutely right.
You're absolutely right. Except for it didn't, instead of you having to come in and be like, hey, that was an idiotic move, right?
Mm-hmm.
The types are telling it, hey, you're wrong.
This doesn't
You're
work.
absolutely right. You
Yeah.
know? So it reinforces that that kind of learning engine for these models to actually do things productively.
Right. I think type safety is one of the the ethics in your TanStack ethics page
Or
that I said.
tenets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, then there's also framework being framework agnostic.
Yeah.
So that's another big one we maybe want to talk about. Also, hence the name from React Query to.
Yeah. Early on, I loved Angular.
Mm-hmm.
Angular 1x was just it brought me into front end in a way that I didn't have before. You know, I used to do a ton of PHP before, and WordPress and building, plugins and just building kind of one page sites with PHP. But I never really got fully into like the front end side of things until Angular came along. I didn't use any frameworks before Angular. I went
Mm-hmm.
back and tried a lot of them afterwards. But when Angular came along with, two-way data binding, I was just like, wow, this is so magical. Um, but when Angular came into play, I adopted it all in, and I really got into Angular. And that's when I experienced my first existential crisis when
Mm-hmm.
React came out. And everything, everybody's moving over to React, and I'm going, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it felt like I had to relearn JavaScript. I mean, I know it's all JavaScript, but that's how like dedicated I was to Angular. It's just like this thing's gonna win
Yeah.
forever. And then we had to switch over to React. So I switched over to React, and I caught myself doing the same thing of like, oh man, React is just the best. And it's just gonna be the best thing forever and ever and ever. And it's never gonna change. This is before hooks and
Yeah.
before all the fun stuff that React has been through. And I saw myself doing that same thing. And then I saw Vue
Uh-huh.
and Angular 2 and Svelte. And I said, it's this idea of the UI framework. And I was like, you know what? I already went through this once. I could bet you that there's a non-zero chance that happens again. And even if it doesn't, there are enough people using other frameworks that would benefit from these same things.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big moment because we had to work hard to rip out a lot of the logic that we had put into like these React
Yeah.
specific libraries to make them an agnostic core. And it was a lot of fun because we're like, okay, what does belong with React and what is the actual core of it? And we ended up with just these TypeScript libraries.
Mm-hmm.
The cores of all these libraries we have are just in TypeScript. They don't have anything else. And they're really zero dependency TypeScript libraries, and then they just have these adapters for each framework around them. And that was pretty valuable for us, because I think it not only did it make it framework agnostic, but it helped us understand what value are we adding to the system
Mm-hmm.
versus what value are we piggybacking off of from each framework. And it really helped us refine the true value add that each library was bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think that's it's a wonderful story. There's another pillar as well in the efforts, which is the entire TanStack ecosystem, the project really being not bound or tied to any particular organization, but being.
Yeah. And that has closer relationship with like our sustainability and profitability
Mm-hmm.
model, which sustainability and open source is just really um it has a tricky past. Open source has always been difficult to sustain. And a lot of people try tons of different models. There's
Mm-hmm.
licensing models and there's open collective type stuff. Uh, there's the benevolent dictator for life method, which I probably kind of fall into that
Mm-hmm.
category a little bit. And all of those different models, you see companies try and either use open source to build a paid product, or they try and build open source as like a kind of hybrid paid product. There's, donations, and there's sponsorships, and there's partnerships, and there's endorsements. There's just all these different ways. Really, all of it comes back to that most open source is free.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want your project to grow via the open source system, you have to make it open and free to really ensure that it's going to be the best. Because the best ones are going to be the ones that have the most people from the ecosystem putting their power and their mind and their effort into it. But then at the same time, you've got this tug of war on the other side, where at some point you have to figure out, well, where do we stop that upper bound to say we need to make money, right?
Yeah.
And I struggled with this for years. I probably could have done full-time TanStack very much earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but I never really wanted to do it until I was convinced that there was a model that I could start to use that wouldn't like dilute my incentives for open source.
Mm-hmm.
So, the second that I start taking money from an organization that wants to change the open source software in some way, that changes the incentives model. Now we're not now we don't want to be the best thing. We want to be the best thing for X, Y, or Z, right? And that doesn't have the best interests of everybody
Yeah.
in mind. And or the minute that you do a dual license and you say, hey, you know what? 80% of the features for this library are free, but 20% of them are paid. Dual, you've got this kind of enterprisey license to that. Well, now you're kind of having that tug of war with yourself. When you wake up in the morning,
Or
you
with
go,
your biggest customer.
yeah, or your biggest customer. When you
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and you say, I have 10 hours today or whatever to make a difference. Who am I going to make a difference for?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to go make a difference for the, you know, 1.5 million developers who are using my product for free?
Mm.
Or am I going to go make a difference for the companies who are paying me and paying my mortgage and paying for the food on my table, right? So the incentives again start to misalign a little bit. And the model that I've kind of landed on and that we are still figuring out is this really in-house closely knit partnership model, which is exactly what we have with CodeRabbit and TanStack, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's these unique opportunities um, for companies to align themselves with the direction that we're going and align themselves with the people that use TanStack, but without compromising the direction of TanStack, right? CodeRabbit users and TanStack users are probably the same people,
Mm-hmm.
and by us using CodeRabbit and helping you guys figure out, oh, you know what, this is what we could do better, and showing the developers who also love TanStack that like, hey, we use CodeRabbit because it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
We can spread awareness for brands and products that we vet and that we love without really tarnishing or changing the incentives for our products. Our relationship between TanStack and CodeRabbit does not change the fact that we still are going to wake up every day needing to make sure that TanStack has the best free open source version of this library for
Mm-hmm.
developers. It doesn't change that. So that's been my North Star over the years, is like any decision that I have to make, I'm like, does this change that incentive in any way? And if it does, just stay clear.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. That's truly inspiring. What I come to think about when you talk to me like this is how do you maintain that North Star under such immense pressure though, because let's go through the banner on your website, right? You have intense companies, billion-dollar businesses using your libraries who I'm sure they want to try and bring some influence on some maybe features that they want. How do you keep up the team with, how many people are working in the team that you have right now? There must be a lot going on there.
Yeah, I think the first principle that I have kind of really tried to make important is to just go slow.
Mm-hmm.
I think in today's world, everybody wants to go fast, and so do I. With the technology, I want to go fast. With the business side of things, it's very tempting. I've had venture capital knocking down my door
I believe it.
for the last 5 to 6 years, offering me inordinate sums of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, for what? I'm not going to be able to make you back 100x or even 10x your money.
Yeah.
I won't be able to give you back any of your money, really. What's your plan here? And they're kind of like, well, we don't know.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I'm like, no, it just doesn't make sense. So the first solve for that is just figure out a way to organically grow at the right speed. If you can't afford to hire a full-time developer, don't hire the developer. If you can't afford to quit, if I couldn't afford to quit my job at my last startup, because I'm not making enough with my open source, then don't quit your job. Like, it's that simple. Just resisting the temptation to try and go faster than really what you have the legs to run with, right? I spent 10 years at my last startup building that startup. And not once was I like, oh yeah, you know what? There's this cool possibility for TanStack that I'm just going to ditch this in the middle of here and go run with this and raise some venture capital. No, like I waited until it was a very clear moment where it's like, you know what? My journey is naturally going this direction. I have enough sustainability to sustain myself at least. And that was a scary day when I was like, you know what? I'm going to go full-time on TanStack.
Wow.
I'm going to talk to my co-founders, and TanStack's still cruising. And I was able to even get some of my open source team. Now they're working for my last startup, kind of taking my place a little bit in some ways. It's very fun to watch. But the day came where I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this out. And I have enough sponsorship and partnership where I'm going to do it on my own. And it was very scary, even just for me. So I couldn't imagine being like, oh yeah, let's hire devs and let's do all this. Because sponsorship and partnerships just disappear at any moment. So you have to be careful. Obviously, we have more sustainability coming in to TanStack than I need personally now. And that's where it starts to get really fun. Because TanStack's a really large organization. And there's some people who are putting a lot of time into TanStack. And I've always been a firm believer everybody needs, there are a lot of these individuals who are like working on TanStack with me. They would probably tell you, I'm just doing it because it's fun, because I love it. It's a hobby. I'm like, that's wonderful, but come on. I want to incentivize you more. So, I mean, my long-term vision is to get to the point where it's like, no, like if you want to work full-time on TanStack, we should be able, and you're contributing that much to it, we should be able to hire you full-time. And that doesn't need to be this existential moment where we flip a switch, because we have GitHub sponsors. We have ways of saying, oh yeah, you know what? Stay at your job. If you're doing contracting, keep doing it. You work at, wherever, BMW, keep doing it, right? You can keep doing your thing, and we can sponsor you, and you can make some decent cash on the side and also have a lot of fun and do it for the love of it, And I think organically that starts to look like, okay, if you organically reward people as you can and as they contribute, eventually it just kind of turns into employment, right? I think hopefully one day I wake up and I'm just like, oh my goodness, we're sponsoring this person this much money every month. Like, why don't we just call it full time and just full time, right?
Right.
And it'd be the same idea that I went through with my last startup. It's like, at some point they're going to be like, huh, well, why do I keep going into this daily job every day when really all I want to do is TanStack? If the sustainability is there, would I work on TanStack full time?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is yes, then absolutely.
Yeah.
So, um, as you can tell, it's just a delicate topic.
Absolutely. I can just imagine how it must be to balance, especially if you have maybe some people starting voluntary contributions, some people on a certain.
Yeah,
Then you also want to keep the directions right. We talked about why it's important to understand as a developer where the funding is coming from for an open source project. And
and we have the TanStack team. Not only are they some of the most talented engineers that I've ever met on the planet, all of them are wicked smart, but they're also extremely kind and charitable people.
Mhm.
And contributing to TanStack over the years, it's not a static thing. Everybody has these phases of life and different things happen. And you know, sometimes you get laid off. Sometimes you're just done at a job, you need something new, or
Mhm.
sometimes you're just going to go back to whatever. It's always different. And what I have really respected from the TanStack team and the contributors there is that, man, every single one of them is so charitable and kind to one another. I've had I've had maintainers that I'm sponsoring for a good amount, and they'll go and get a job and they'll say, I have a job now. Like I just got this awesome job and it pays really well. Take my sponsorship that I'm getting and I want you to roll it over to somebody else who needs it in this moment. And I'm just like, wow,
Okay.
can do.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's been cool over the years to see, like, as our sustainability grows, also the shift of of where the costs are going,
Yeah.
just to make sure that, being a part of the TanStack team isn't just like this transactional thing.
Mhm.
It's like once we bring you on, you're kind of part of the family,
All right.
and family members sometimes go through rough patches. And everybody kind of pitches in to take care of each other and get you through that patch, whether that's you need a new job. Everybody's going to go to bat. We're going to get on Twitter. We're going to find you something new, you know, and hopefully long term, it doesn't even have to be that way. Hopefully long term, it's just like, hey, you know what? One by one, you'll start to
Mhm.
see engineers come full time into TanStack, and that's the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what is your biggest threshold right now that's holding you back to accelerate at TanStack? What's the biggest thing that you're working on right now?
Tokens. No,
Yeah.
I'm just joking. um,
The biggest struggle, if you so want.
you know, I'm not going to say people because we have a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's definitely some combination of having the right people. Our team is not you can't just go and pluck a developer out of the crowd and say, "Come join the team. We just need more hands." We don't need more hands. We have the expertise that we need. So the biggest thing that's blocking us right now is just time.
Mm.
We need time to roll things out, time to test. We need to coordinate that time with the accelerated time frames that AI is giving
Yeah.
us now.
Mm.
So, and the other thing too is uh, the one thing that we could grow would be like if I could snap my fingers tomorrow and
Mm.
triple or quadruple like our partnership or sponsorship revenue,
Mm.
that would mean instantly that we could be like, okay, full time, for whoever wants it, for a couple of people
Yeah.
could just go full time. And I would hope that that would unlock some new momentum for us, because as maintainers, other than me, no one can really justify sinking 100% of their day. There's people that do it.
Yeah.
I have maintainers that do it, and they, even though they have full time jobs, they're just like, I'm going to work on TanStack. Because it's just fun,
Yeah.
But it's hard to justify that when you've got other responsibilities.
Of course.
If
Yeah.
I could just get rid of that and say, yeah, you know what, TanStack is like a full time team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm really curious what we'd be able to do.
Yeah.
which is obviously why I'm working towards that goal. So
You are, yeah. I mean, and that also speaks to the fact, I think, that you have some really amazing people on your team that they're able to commit so much, even
yeah,
though.
AI has unlocked a lot though at the speed
Mhm.
at which we can work. Because we have a lot of ideas. You'll notice there's a lot of new libraries.
Mhm.
If you go to the sidebar, there's a lot of beta, alpha. Um, AI has unlocked our ability to get ideas out quickly. Like
Yeah.
hotkeys is one that came together really quickly. TanStack AI itself,
Mhm.
LM and Jack are kind of leads on TanStack AI. We took it from conception to alpha in, I think, 5 weeks,
Yeah.
something like
Let's
that.
talk about that. What is TanStack AI?
TanStack AI, I mean, the easiest way to describe it to anybody in the ecosystem is definitely to start with saying it's an AI SDK competitor,
Mhm.
because it very much is. That's and there's not really a whole lot of other products out there like it, so that's the easiest way to describe it. But going beyond that, though, so we decided to build our own AI SDK, uh, but using the TanStack tenants. So we
Mhm.
wanted it to be just insanely type safe,
Mhm.
through and through. And we took that type safety to an extreme by building isomorphic tool
Mhm.
calls. So you can ship tools that are both server and client aware, and that type safety is shared between them. It's very cool stuff there. And
How is
since,
it maybe different from something like Mastra?
yeah, I haven't used Mastro enough to know
Mhm.
personally. Jack and Alan would probably be able to answer
Yeah.
that better. But off the cuff, I would just say it offers the flexibility for you to change the models that you're using
Mhm.
and the modals that you're using and mix and match them together really easily. Um, we partner with OpenRouter.
Mhm.
OpenRouter is fantastic, and they can kind of do that same thing in the cloud, but the flexibility to kind of just build only what you want in the actual SDK is really important too. So for instance, one of the things that I like about it is that you can import TanStack AI, and if you're only using um, OpenAI and a specific model, and you import those, and you're only using it for chat, like text modal,
Mhm.
when you import those, you'll only pay the cost to import that code. You do not get every other adapter. You do not get every modal. You're not
Mhm.
bringing in video and image generation code. You're not bringing in a bunch of things. So it's a highly tree shakeable
Wow.
library,
Yeah.
which makes it really lightweight. So you can bring it into lightweight situations and be very productive with it. Since we've launched it, it's still in alpha, but we have added a lot of things to it. And I think that's where it gets more exciting. The
Mhm.
last few months, the question of, well, how does it differentiate has been more like we're catching up.
Yeah.
We're catching up to feature parity.
Mhm.
But I would say we hit feature parity a while ago. What we're doing now is very, very exciting. So some other things that are new around it. Code mode. You heard
Mhm.
of code mode? Um, Jack Harrington has been doing some amazing things with TanStack AI in code mode, but it's this how do you explain code mode without doing a whole podcast on it? Um, the idea is that you can send off these chats, this inference to an isolate
Mhm.
that can run code, and it's sandboxed.
Yeah.
And inside of this sandbox, the agent can do a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Instead of trying to think through, okay, how am I going to call all of these tools, these tool calls, building up this big tool call chain and mowing through context to figure out what it
Mhm.
needs to do. Instead, you give it a base set, optionally, give it a base set of APIs that it can use inside of this sandbox.
Okay. Yeah.
So you could say, hey, here's some base tool calls or just some base context. It's like you have access to a CLI. You can
Mhm.
use fetch to go and do this. You can do whatever. But most important of all, you are in JavaScript. You
Right.
can write code and execute it. So instead of inferring through all of the tool calls and everything that it needs to do, it will just write the code that it needs to write to go and do the things, which opens up new avenues for one, your execution being more performant.
Mm-hmm.
It can write code that can do parallelization and races, and there's lots of cool, fast things that it can do in code mode, in code, rather than having to infer everything.
Right.
But also what it can do is it can build tools for itself on the fly. So if you ask it to go and do something, it says, okay, yeah, I wrote the code to do that thing. It can self-heal and self-correct to figure out how to do that. It can do math properly because it's in code and not in inference. And once it has achieved a result, you can actually tell it, you can give it a driver to save that thing that it just built as a tool. So the next time you come through and you say, hey, I want you to go and query the database, get me last week's invoice, whatever, it'll say, oh, I already built that tool. I built that tool for you, maybe a week ago or whatever. And that tool is right here. So it just imports the tool that it already built, executes it, but it's not executing tool calls. It's just executing code.
Right.
To go and do the thing. So code mode is just wild. Like, it has much bigger implications than what I just went over right here.
That's amazing. I mean, I think you launched TanStack AI, was it December 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a month after ReactConf. Yep.
Wow. It's gone a long way since then already, like many more features added.
There's a lot of other things too. Alem has released like 4 new features for TanStack AI just this week. There's incremental tool discovery. We have hooks inside of TanStack AI for every single generation step. So you can basically write plugins now for TanStack AI that can track things and do analytics or whatever you want.
Would you say, is there something it's particularly good? And I mean, you would imagine that TanStack AI obviously it should fit in natively with everything else in the TanStack. Is that what I should think it of, or are you exploring? I mean, the code TanStack code mode that you just explained also seems to be tapping into a lot of other fields that are more overlapping in a Venn diagram with other agent SDKs or AI SDKs that I would know about.
The code mode stuff does require, it requires an environment, an isolated environment to run it in. But everything that we're building with TanStack AI and really every other library we make, we try not to rely on the other pieces inside of the ecosystem to do that. We want them to function in isolation on their own. Because I think something we really value at TanStack is like the ability to do brownfield development. I would never want anything at TanStack to be like this existential atomic replacement. It's like, oh, I want to use this tool from TanStack. Well, you got to rewrite everything. That is the worst. And that's where React Query, people loved it because you could just drop it into an existing system and incrementally adopt it. And I think we do that with everything. You can use React Table like that. Even TanStack DB, which we don't have time to talk about that probably, but TanStack DB is the same way. Like it's build your own sync engine incrementally.
Let's talk about that still real quick though.
Okay,
because I think that's also very interesting. I had Arthur from James Arthur from ElectricSQL here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so maybe you can I mean, where do your visions align on what you're building, and especially now with the local first movement? Can you?
Yeah, I'm talking with James and Kyle Matthews. We talked a long time ago. Because what we found is that when I built React Query, the early versions of React Query actually had schema built into them, with tables and schema, and it was normalized, very much like GraphQL almost. And that was very rigid at the time. I was like, this isn't going to catch on. Like I need something more flexible. And so I didn't go down the normalized, truly like a database data store journey. I thought maybe later. And React Query has been great for 95% of people that use it are like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
But there are use cases where you need something more than React Query. And instead of trying to like turn React Query into something that it's not, Kyle came to me and he's like, hey, listen, we're doing this at ElectricSQL and
Mm-hmm.
it's sync and it's sync engines. But we realized that there's this client side portion that everyone seems to reinvent. And we don't want to reinvent it. We want to build it as a core. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I wanted when I built React Query, but it was just too early.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, we've already started building it.
Wow.
And so what happened there is I was like, okay, let me see it. Like, let's build this together, right?
Yeah.
I really didn't build anything. I mean, Kyle and James built basically all of it.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
And we had to make sure that it was going to follow all the core tenets of TanStack, is super type safe. We wanted it to integrate really well with React Query, and so you could kind of build a sync engine on top of React Query. But I think the most important value add there was that it was one of the first libraries that I was like, I didn't really write this.
Mm-hmm.
I may have helped shape some of it, but Kyle and James, they had this wonderful idea, and if they had released DB under Electric,
Yeah.
who's to say if it would actually get much traction, because it would look proprietary,
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, they're just trying to get me to use ElectricSQL,
Yeah.
But when you say, you know what, no, this should be open source, really open source, they came to TanStack because they knew, hey, you know what, with the TanStack brand and the help of the team, we can get this vetted by a lot of people quickly,
Mm-hmm.
good ideas, get people to test it. And not only that, but people will trust it, that it will stay open. And yes, ElectricSQL is an adapter, a really good adapter for TanStack DB, but it's not the only one already.
Yeah.
And DB is way cool. So yeah, that's one of the more interesting origin stories for one of our libraries is TanStack DB. But needless to say, I'm very excited about it
Yeah.
because I think there is a special class of application where sync engine is just you have to have it.
What do you think about the AI ecosystem? James, for example, has a certain vision about how secure, more privacy, data-centric AI could be part of local first, and how Sync Engine could play a role there. Is that something that you think about as well?
I haven't thought about that often, to be
Yeah.
honest, but now that you're saying it, I can see how that would be a critical part of that.
Uh-huh.
TanStack DB. I mean, when you're talking about AI, you're talking about streams. Really, it's the way that we interact with all of our AI tech. It's through streams, and anywhere there's streams, there's real time.
Yeah.
And so TanStack DB naturally fits into that story of like there's real time syncing of streams, and ElectricSQL itself. I think that's where they're specializing with truly good, technology that may be proprietary, but it is hard to build.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do real time stuff with Postgres,
Yeah.
for instance, maybe up to 10,000 concurrent connections or something like that. But what do you do when you need to scale real time to millions or hundreds of millions of concurrent connections? So that's where I feel like the work that they're doing plays more into that. And they're even doing more open source on top of that. Have you heard of durable streams? Did you talk about durable streams? I feel like ElectricSQL is giving so much more back out of their open source than they are like even ElectricSQL. Like durable streams are so cool. So they clearly have a vision for, what does it look like to have like control the full pipeline and the state management around running many, many, many agents. What does the state management look like for that? How do you consume that? And yeah, TanStack DB plays a role in that.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of brings us slowly towards the end of our session here. I have a little tradition that I have with all my guests before I close an episode, which is like a little round of rapid fire questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So let's start with the obvious. Favorite programming language?
TypeScript.
TypeScript, of
Yeah.
course. Favorite AI model?
Oh, for what?
Well, that's up to you.
I don't know. Right now, I've been impressed with 5.4 with GPT. Not even Codex, just
Uh-huh.
GPT 5.4.
Deep thinking. You didn't have a thinking.
Yeah, I've just been. I use it. I use it to plan. I like to use it to plan,
Yeah.
and man, it just thinks of a lot of things that I never think about. So it's been very impressive. But when it comes like time to implement,
Yeah.
I very much like that, aggressive style of cloud code of Opus.
Okay.
Yeah, or sometimes even Sonnet 4.6.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean by aggressive?
I just feel like whenever I ask Claude to plan,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you need a plan? Oh, here's a plan. I'm done. Here's a plan. I thought about everything, and here it
Yeah.
is. And I'm like, did you really think about everything? And it's like, well, no, you're right. Okay, let's think about it some more. So it's very like quick to act, which in some cases I like, which is why I like I like GPT more to think about things because it'll take its time and ruminate. It might be a little quieter. Like I don't get that banter out of it that I do out of Opus or something like that. But eventually the plans that come out of GPT are really good. But when it comes time to implement and it's like, okay, now I want you to go and write the thing. I feel like GPT is like, okay, I'll go write it. And I'm like kind of impatient a little bit. And I feel like sometimes I give that over to Cloud Code, and Cloud Code will be like, I'll write it, and I'll write it so good, and I'll write it so fast. And it's like a little bit, its personality feels a little bit more.
It's so interesting. I feel like maybe
aggressive.
you're using a different model than I, because I mean, I ask these questions to all builders that come on the pod, and I personally also in my experience, I found Codex to be a little bit more like I have a very specific thing. Let's say I want to give this example. I want to switch my website to dark mode. I want to implement that very specific task, very clear. I give that to Codex. It's going to be fast and come back. When I have something more long running, something more in depth, where maybe also like still developing my plan as well, I prefer to use Opus 4.6.
Yeah, long running, definitely use Opus.
Yeah.
I think it generally runs longer. Especially if you have a sufficient task list for it.
Yeah.
It will chew through it, which again is why I like to use it for implementation.
Right.
But while I'm sitting there chatting with it, I like to chat with GPT more, except for the little upsell. In chat in 5.4, have you heard people talk about the upsells at the end? Where it's like, oh yeah, I solved your problem. And if you're interested, I can show you a quick little trick to, increase your speed even more. Like at the end, have you heard of this?
I haven't. I mean, what I have is like, okay, am I using the 1 million token context window? Then like you already know you're gonna run out of juice sooner on your max plan. It's funny that you say that though, because they've made such a big buzz, such a big splash with their no ads in AI.
Yeah.
But now they're coming up with something like that.
I think they call it like it's like engagement. It's like it's engagement maxing or something.
Okay.
Like at the end, you'll ask it to do something, you're planning and you're like, hey, I want to make this faster. And it's like, oh yeah, we can make it faster. And here's the way to do it. A, B, and C. This is going to make it faster. Are you interested in making it even more faster? If you just ask me, I will tell you some other interesting ways to make it more, faster. And you're like, are you, it's like, it's trying to like bait me into talking with it more. And I'm like, that's weird. You sound like what does it sound like? It sounds like an ad.
Yeah.
Like it's not an ad for something, it's an ad for itself.
It's just like trying to keep you on the platform.
Yeah, it's like, and with 3 easy payments of $10.99, I can offer you some more advice. And as the tone changes and everything at the end, and you're like, okay, see ya. Okay, Claude, take it from here.
Yeah. Interesting. I used to ask this question, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate anymore. IDE or CLI?
I haven't written a manual line of code in a very long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I still use Cursor
Uh-huh.
to do it if I have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just basically using it as a text editor now. I do occasionally go in and try Cursor. Cursor's pretty cool, especially the stuff around like their browser integration
Mm-hmm.
that they have now, which is pretty neat. Where the browser's like in the editor with you. But for the most part, I have just been using open code.
Yeah.
Yeah, and occasionally I'll jump into the UI versions of Codex and Claude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I feel like that's where the ecosystem is going. I think.
I'm really excited about some others though. Like Theo has his T3
Chat.
his T3 chat one that's pretty, or it's T3 code now.
Yeah.
That one's actually pretty fun. I think I'm excited about that one because of all the potential, because it's open source and pretty hackable. But then again, so is open code. So the open code UI is also pretty hackable. I'm just kind of I don't know. I'm picky with my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like Claude Code itself, like all the keyboard commands and the TUI that it has, and it works and it's fast now, especially Jared over there, like they're doing wonderful things. It's much faster now, but still, whatever it is, there's some X factor about Claude Code itself that I just don't enjoy. I would so much rather use open code for some reason. So
Interesting.
but I think at the end of the day, I'll probably end up in a UI anyway. And I still have yet to try some of these like larger orchestration things as well. Like I want to try Conductor, and I don't know. I put out a tweet the other day and it got like 500 responses of go try my orchestrator. And I'm like, yeah, everybody's building one. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm more curious about that. Like I am getting more interested in like I just want to be managing swarms of agents instead of, chatting with them. I think like Jamin. Do you know Jamin from Infinite Red?
I don't.
He's more like in the React Native world, but he recently tweeted like, he's like, you don't even need an orchestrator. Just make a huge to-do list and then just say work into the night, and a lot of modern models will do that. So
yeah, I mean they have now the agent teams in Cloud Code. Yeah. Great. Little switch of topic questions. I mean, Tana, you built so many amazing libraries, amazing tools. How do you decide what not to build when somebody comes up to you with an idea?
We do get a lot of ideas. We get a lot of people reaching out like, you should build this and you should do that.
Maybe from your internal team, not somebody random.
Well, from the internal team, everybody's pretty synced up on what we should and shouldn't do. I think one of the first things we ask is like, do we have the bandwidth for this? Is there somebody that's willing to say, I will maintain this for the next 5 years? And if we can't answer that question with a yes, then we're not going to do it.
Okay.
I think the next question is, well, what else is out there? And are they solving it in the right way? Right. I mean, a good example is like TanStack Intent is one of our latest libraries where we do skill distribution through NPM. And I already got a lot of comments that were like, why the heck would you build this when NPM skills already exists? Like the NPX skills thing that for Solid.
Yeah.
They nailed the need for it. But when we were looking at it and we were using it ourselves and we're like, oh, this is really neat. And we looked into Context 7, C7, is it still
Context 7?
Context 7. We tried a lot of these tools internally just because we're all using agents. And then we all found out, we're like, what would be really nice is if skills were just shipped with the library and versioned with the library. And we're like, is that possible with these other solutions? And it's like, well, yeah, but it's kind of a workaround. And we're like, are we recreating a registry? Did we just recreate our own package manager, but around skills? Like, we should not do that. So a lot of it comes usually from us trying to use ecosystem tools as a group.
Yeah.
And then collectively, we all kind of come into the TanStack Discord. We're in there all the time, and we're all just like, hey, did you use this tool? Oh, yeah, I loved it, but I did not like this. Oh yeah, me neither. I didn't like it when it did that either. You know what would be cool is if it did blah 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 blah. And sometimes that turns into, hey, we should just make a PR. We should, work with them to make this better. And other times it's like, hey, we have everything we need to, in our eyes, solve it the right way. So
Yeah,
let's go do it. And AI has lowered the barrier to entry for that as well.
that is true. But I think it's still taste is now, I think, the
Yeah.
most important factor.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we probably curate the best within the
Mhm.
team is we have a really well-rounded team with, there's not too many like yes people. There's enough people on the team that look at things and they're like, I love this. And the other person's like, really? I don't. And we're like, what? Why? And so there's a lot of like internal debate
Yeah.
to make sure that anything coming out of TanStack is, forged in good roots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a skill that you shipped lately that impressed you? Like,
Oh, like an actual agent skill.
yeah.
I mean, I've been using TanStack Intent to build all of the new skills, like just fresh skills for all of our libraries. And we shipped a meta skill with TanStack Intent. So TanStack Intent has a skill to help you build skills.
Wow.
That one was fun.
Yeah.
And Kyle Matthews is
try
the
this.
one who kind of put that together.
Yeah.
But it's cool because you can install TanStack Intent and then say, hey, what are all my skills? And it's like, hey, there's one here to build skills. So you say, hey, build me a skill about this, and it will use our skill to help you build it. It's skillception, right?
Wow.
So that was a fun one. I didn't write it, but I have a lot of fun doing it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Last two questions. What is something you would recommend a junior developers who wants to get into open source, the true open source, to do today? Because it just seems like there's such a code is now cheap, right?
Yeah.
And it seems easier than ever to contribute, yet you need to contribute differently, I think, in today's world of AI. Do you have a recommendation? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, communication is probably the most important thing in a world where generating PRs and issues is cheap, and in a world where you can have a clawbot go and talk to other people for you, it's never the same as just being able to actually communicate to each other directly and developing your communication skills. TanStack wouldn't be anywhere today if I didn't know how to actually communicate with users about what they want, what are their pains, and trying to also explain to them, here's my idea and here's why I think it's good. And, selling and marketing your ideas to others. Like that's something that I think we're going to see through AI for a really long time. There's always going to be like the M dash of something. There's going to be GitHub pull requests, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm seeing M dash, all up in here. I can tell it's AI.
Yeah.
And and like me and Johnny right here, we were looking through an about page for a company today,
Yeah.
and we looked through all the profile photos, and we're like, oh man, these profile photos look really good. Wait, and you kind of see that you can like, oh, they're all
AI generated.
AI. I mean, like they're real, but they've been touched up and done AI generated. And you're like, so you start seeing M dash everywhere,
Yeah.
And I think that if you really want to be useful, you can tell when people put in the real time to do something. And even though I'm using AI to generate bug reports and whatnot, you can still tell when people put in the time and the effort and the care into something, instead of just like being lazy. So that's step number one, is if you're just going to be lazy with AI, then we're not going to, you just dead on arrival.
Yeah.
So you can't be lazy. You have to be a software engineer. You've got to read. You have to read and understand the code that you're generating, and you have to get into the weeds on performance and patterns and meta stuff. How does AI reason about this thing?
Yeah.
Stop thinking about how you're going to use it. Start thinking about how other people are going to use it.
Do you think that reading the code is really still going to be something people do in maybe 2027, for example, let's say in a year from now?
I think it's all going to depend on like the risk factor. Right? If you are building a blog or you're building a a a brochure site for your aunt or your uncle who's got some brilliant
Yeah.
idea, it's just like, are you going to read all the code that thing spits out? Probably not. You're just going to say, here's
Looks
the
good to me.
idea, here's a logo, just do it.
Yeah.
If we find a bug, then we'll fix it. If something doesn't look right, we'll correct it, you know. Uh, but if you're building something really sophisticated, if you're putting together a data processing pipeline that spans multiple microservices
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to figure out how to scale everything together on your infrastructure, are you going to YOLO that? Probably not. You're still going to use AI to generate it, but the only way that you're going to be able to reliably do that is by using AI and reading everything that it puts out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think same way, like you're not going to YOLO some banking
Yeah.
transactional
Yeah.
thing, right? So it's all about the risk factor.
Yeah, makes sense. Last question. What is an open source myth, like a preconception that people have about open source that you would like to kill?
I think it's funny when everyone thinks that open source libraries and developers that compete against each other have this like that they're like that they don't like each other in real
Uh-huh.
life, like humans. When in reality, the reality is that I have more in common with all of the other open source developers who are building libraries, who, yeah, are competitors to my product, but I have more in common with them than I do with the people who are using my library sometimes. So, no, we're not enemies. We actually, if you got 100 people together in a room, those are the people I'm going to want to hang out with
Yeah.
and chat with and talk to. I'm not avoiding them. I want to hang out with them. I want to be friends. So yeah, I think that surprises people.
Yeah.
It's like me and Mark Erickson of Redux.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Mark Erickson, we talk all the time.
Yeah.
I love that guy. If we are in the same room, we're going to be hanging out. And they're going to be like, wait, Redux, React Query, like,
How does that fit?
Yeah, it's like, no, we love hanging out together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that open source ecosystem, same with James, by the way. I feel you feel that energy for the love of the, he called it the free internet. Yeah.
Fabricated tribalism, I
Yeah.
think, is probably a myth that could be destroyed. Like, we all have so much more in common than we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to like fabricate all this tribalism around libraries and patterns, and I mean, it's comes from just the stupidest opinions from 30 years ago, tabs versus spaces type stuff. It's like we like to invent tribalism because I think in some ways we think it defines our taste,
Yeah.
right? And taste is something that is valuable. But you can have taste without being tribal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, we'll leave it on that. Thank you, Tanner, so much for taking the time.
yeah, you bet.
It's
Thanks
been
for
great.
having me.
Yeah, great conversation. We'll hope to see you again soon. If you're listening to this and you haven't tried TanStack yet, I'll bet you I'm gonna try at the Skill Intent library soon. Later today probably. Yeah, thanks for tuning in and thanks for being here.